Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending another Warriors Corner. Today we have Colonel Darby McNulty and Colonel Gregory Johnson.
All right, good to go. Hey, yeah, that's right. Periodically as we go through this brief, so just keep you guys awake. Want to say thanks for stopping by, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Integrated Personnel and Pay System Army. I'm Greg Johnson. I work for the G1 of the Army, and I'm really what's called the functional lead for this system. And this is Colonel Darby McNulty. He's the PM for the program, and we essentially are battle buddies in the effort to get this program done and fielded to the Army over the next couple of years. So we're going to do a couple of things today. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk really about the capabilities of this system. We're going to talk about the timelines, and we're going to talk about really why this matters for the United States Army, why it really matters for the United States Army. And then we'll take some questions from you at the back end of the presentation. So let's jump into it. Next slide, please. So really, this is the bottom line up front. Really, the no kidding, what's going on and why IPSA matters. IPSA is a system that's really going to help us transform from a legacy environment much rooted in the industrial age processes of the 1950s and 60s from an HR and pay perspective into a modern talent management system where we take into account the knowledge, skills, and behaviors of all of our soldiers and utilize them in the right place, the right time, at the right moment. That's really the so what of IPSA. Most of the senior leaders in the Army talk IPSA in the context of three main capabilities. For the first time ever, we're going to put everybody into the same system. So I got to say that again because it's really groundbreaking in the Army. For the first time ever, we're going to put the total force, all three components, the active force, the reserve force, the National Guard force, into one HR system. So today, we don't have that. For those that are in the Army, you all kind of know that. For others, it's a bit shocking that we're in 2017 and that we're all in separate systems. The other thing that IPSA is going to bring across for the United States Army is talent management. So for the first time ever, we're going to be able to track the knowledge, skills, and behavior of our soldiers and then utilize that in the assignments process, but then also to give commanders just a better visibility of what kind of talent they have in the Army. And then the third main capability that we're going to get is auditability. So we're going to tie HR and pay together in the system. So for the first time ever, you're going to have this connection between an HR transaction, a pay transaction, and then you're going to know who did the transaction in the system. Again, this is a big shocker for a lot of folks. Today in our systems, you just don't have that. So in the future, in this modern system, you'll be able to do that. I think what Darby's pointing at is, at the end of the day, we're going to use mobile technology as well. And I got a couple of slides that talk that as we go through this presentation. Again, it's a big leap forward from how we do personnel and pay today to where we're going in the future. And individuals are going to like this for different reasons, right? Commanders are going to like this because if everybody's in the same system, you can see your total force, specifically when you deploy. So you can associate reserve and guard units underneath an active duty unit or on the flip side, the other way around, and they can see who's actually in their formations. Again, today you can't do that. You got to use multiple systems to try to figure out what that site picture looks like. In the future, you'll be able to do it in IPSA. Soldiers are going to like it because as we tie HR and pay together, we're going to reduce thousands upon thousands of pay errors that you see today. Most of pay and personnel are done by hard copy forms. The personnel action will be done, it's done on a form, and then you have to transport that form over to a finance entity where then that information is uploaded into a finance system. All kinds of errors result all over the battlefield, but even at home station. IPSA is meant to really go right at that and solve that problem. And then, of course, your HR specialists are going to like it because it's going to be much easier to give your commander a site picture of readiness, give a site picture to your commander for combat power, and then just to do in-depth analytics on the HR side, which is very difficult to do today with all the different systems that we're operating in. Let's go to the next slide.
Everybody got me? Okay, so we're going to, in order to do this, You know, we often get the question, why can't you go faster and do this easier? Well, this is pretty transformational what we're trying to do for the Army. And the Army's been doing business the same way for a long time. So if you really think about, go back to the 1700s, right? There were two generals on horseback next to George Washington, right? One of them was Horatio Gates, the original adjutant general of the Army. The other was the paymaster of the Army. And fast forward in time, we still have HR and pay done separately. So it's the biggest organization in the United States. I was just out at Oracle for their annual conference last week. This is the biggest HR system in the history of the world, right? It's the biggest implementation Oracle's ever done. So we've really spent a lot of time with all the Oracle software and hardware folks talking about how we scale this up and do performance tuning. So this is a pretty significant undertaking. So we wanted to break it into pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is deliver an integrated HR system versus the 54 ones that are used in the Army National Guard into a single HR platform. And we're going to field that over the course of 18. And then in 19, we're going to bring all the systems that are used to do HR in the active and reserve forces onto that single integrated platform. And so once we get the entire Army, you know, 1.1 million soldiers plus all those that, you know, provide support, whether they're civilians or contractors, into a single system, then we're going to do payroll. So you want to build all the pay drivers into the HR system. And then in 2020, you know, we'll run, you know, roughly 45% of the Army's top line, which is payroll for soldiers, in a single integrated system. And then we're going to add some additional enhancements in 20 and 21 to embed the evaluation system and to do retention management. So this is kind of a journey. My team has a bunch of the other programs in the Army that have to do all things human capital, so training and medical sessions. We're working across several lines of effort in the Pentagon and teams to try to get this into a single kind of integrated system where this is going to be the big first step we take. Next chart.
So we're pretty excited about it. It's a big deal. 1.1 million soldiers into one system. You know, I alluded to up front that we have a lot of systems in the Army. So, you know, that picture on your left, I always ask people, what do you think that is? You know, so what do you guys think that is? I mean, it is spaghetti. That's our current architecture today in the HR and pay space in the Army.
I have the haircut I do.
But
that's real.
But that's our current environment today. 2017, that's our current environment. And part of it is because each entity, each component has been allowed to create their own systems over time. So the National Guard runs a system called CIDPERS. It's 1983 technology. The Guard put it in place in 1986. And then each state and territory has been allowed to update that CIDPERS machine differently from the other states. And now you have 54 instances of a system called CIDPERS. That's all rolled up into that. But it's not just a Guard thing. You know, the active force has many systems too. The reserve force has many systems. And then you start to ask, well, what do I use to actually, you know, get the authoritative strength of the United States Army? And that answer is somewhere mixed up in the middle of that. So then when I ask a simple question on how many female captains there are on the Army, it takes about 2 weeks to really get that data for the Chief of Staff of the Army. And part of the issue with that is it's latent. So it's probably not today's answer to how many female captains are in the Army. So again, we're in 2017. It takes a couple of weeks to roll that data up. It's a problem. It's a problem that needs to be solved.
And the data is usually 30 to 40 days old as you aggregate it all to the top of the system. So it takes 2 weeks to get an answer. Not only is it wrong, it's 30 days old. So as we start to bring everyone onto a single platform, you know, and so as our chief wants to get a commander's, you know, dashboard that shows readiness and everything, as we start to fix all the data in the Army and make it real time, we'll be able to provide that sort of real time answers that you can trust.
And if you think about the last slide that you showed where we've broken out releases over time, you know, that's because this is complex. This is not easy to take down. I mean, it's taken us probably 30 to 40 years from a system perspective to get to this. It is going to take some time to unravel that and then to lay in and put it, say, into play. But it's absolutely a problem we need to solve today in 2017, and it absolutely ties to readiness, right? I think you intuitively can understand why this really matters from a readiness perspective. if I can't give you an accurate statistic on your manning or readiness, how do I really get you ready to go out the door to go fight the next fight? It's difficult. It's very difficult. This is going to tremendously change the game for all of us, for commanders, for soldiers, for leaders of the Army at the enterprise level. You put everybody in the same system. You're able to task organize elements from all three components, let alone you'll be able to move from components much easier. Today, it's very difficult to do that, and it generally equates to massive pay errors for someone who transitions between components. Again, a problem absolutely needing to be solved, and IPSE is going to solve that problem as we field it in the next couple of years. Let's go to the next slide. This is another one of my favorite slides. So I like to ask people, the black and white photo on your left, what year do you think that is? It's 1947. Right? This is a 1947 photo. So if you look real closely on that black and white photo, you see mounds of paperwork. You see a hole punch. You see a stamp, because we like to do in and out processing with stamps still in the 2017 Army. Really what I'm getting at is if you go to any person's desk in the HR field, or let alone a commander, that's what their desk looks like today. It's not different. So I could take Colonel Reinhardt today, put her down right in the middle of 1947, and she would be very comfortable with how we do personnel and pay, because it's virtually the same. You do your leave on a form. You do a personnel action on a thing called the 4187. You type stuff into those forms, right? That's exactly how you did it in 1947. The slight difference is you use a computer to type today. In 1947, you guys used what? Typewriter, right? So some of the young soldiers don't know what a typewriter is, but we all do, right? IPSE is meant to eliminate all forms, right? So you're going to do self-service. Colonel McNulty already mentioned off of a mobile device. You're going to do self-service, and your actions are routed in the system. So no longer do you have these massive amounts of paper forms that you're pushing around between organizations, not knowing where they are, losing them. The efficiency is just really bad, to a system that actually tracks this for you and helps you do those actions.
Yeah, there's really only one difference, right? You got to go outside to smoke, right? That's about the only real difference. So, again, we're trying to drive things into the future where we're providing self-service in a mobile environment where you got a user and intuitive interface with the software, so we can better take care of soldiers and families.
All right, next slide, please.
Okay, so I'm not going to read all the words on this, but the point is we're going to roll this out in an agile manner. It's probably one of the larger agile software developments that's going on anywhere. Sometimes we have upward of 15 different Scrum teams, if you know what agile software development is, operating simultaneously. And if you haven't been over to visit us, we're certainly constantly showing people how we're doing this. And we're also working very hard not to customize this product. So we want to use the product as much as we possibly can out of the box, which is sometimes a difficult thing to explain to folks in an institution that are used to doing certain things in business. But we've got some pretty powerful software products that will allow us not to have to customize, using business intelligence products and an integrated sort of CRM help environment to service soldiers in a mobile environment. And we're pretty ruthless about that. If there's a customization that's required, it's got to go all the way up to the 3-4-star governance level, and they're pretty tough about not allowing it to happen. And why is that important, right? Well, we want to get into an environment just like you do today, and I did this weekend. Anyone upgrade their iPhone in the last few days to the first fix to iOS 6 or 11 with, yeah, Roger. So if you don't customize the product, then upgrading the thing becomes easier and easier. As soon as you go in there and do a whole bunch of customizations, an example I like to use is everywhere the word soldier or employee shows up, customize the commercial product to do, say, soldier, right? That's a several $1 million effort, and it's going to make it enormously timely and expensive to upgrade the product. So we're going to try to use this as much as we can. We can still set it up to do the business of the Army, so that this is going to be multiple installments with many, many, many more to come in the future. So this core increment's just the first step of a journey. And if you keep your architecture open and your software products clean, then you can continuously upgrade this product. Because there's a whole bunch of things folks in the Army want to do above and beyond the initial integrated personnel and pay system to make business more powerful, better talent management, and a whole bunch of other things as we go forward in time.
All right, let's go to the next slide. And what I'll do is I'll move pretty quickly through the back end of these slides so we can answer a couple of questions. So this is really just a pictorial representation of what tracking knowledge, skills, and behaviors will do. So we're moving away from a Manning model, or the attempt with IPSA and over time is to move away from just looking at Manning via two variables, which is really MOS, your skill, and your grade or your rank. So today we very much manage the Army essentially on a couple of variables. So if you're an infantryman and a staff sergeant, that's generally how we man. I got a vacancy at Fort Riley for an 11 Bravo E6, and I got a mover, someone who's been on a station for a couple of years at Fort Bragg. And that's how we determine who moves today in the Army for the most part. So in the future, it's, hey, let's track the knowledge, skills, and behaviors of individuals, and let's use that in that manning cycle. So you still execute requirements, you still execute readiness, but there's more holistic understanding of what people bring to the table. Now, this is radically an improvement for commanders. Who is in your formation? What are their full skill sets? What else can they do beyond their MOS and their general experience from a certain grade? We think this will radically change the Army as we move forward. Radically change the Army as we move forward. It's going to be a journey, though. You know, the Army has to decide, hey, what are the knowledge, skills, and behaviors we're going to use? How are we going to track those? And then how do we utilize them both at the commander level and then also at the enterprise level to distribute individuals? Let's go to the next slide, please. We're also conducting HR transformation along with putting the system in place. So as you modernize business processes from the industrial base, legacy that we have today to 2017, you have to transform your workforce as well. So we're in the middle of transforming that workforce over the next several years to match who needs to be where in organizations to do the work that comes with IPSA. At the same time, we're also moving in the active force, the pay function, the mill pay function, from the finance core to the HR core. So that puts it in line primarily with how the civilian world, corporate world does business. But for the Army, that's a new thing. So we're doing that work as we implement IPSA over time. Next slide, please. Darby talked a little bit about COT software. You know, what comes with using an off-the-shelf software is some of the native things with that software. So in this case, there's certain terminology that the software brings that we will utilize in the Army. And this slide just generally depicts some of the basic language definitions that we'll use. Next slide. And we're gonna end here. So we have a pretty robust Facebook and YouTube page presence. This is really how we try to communicate with the force. So all updates, how we're moving around, talking to people, how we're showing functionality, all is going to be on these sites. So please come out and visit those sites as you want to see status as we go to the right. And then also, we are presenting demos, live demos on Wednesday here at the conference. So let's go to the next slide and have some of the information on where that is. We also have some roaming teams that will show demos on iPads. So please, if you see an IPSA t-shirt, please stop and talk to those folks because they'll walk you through some of the functionality of the system. And then with that, we will take some questions.
Gentlemen, my name's Howie Snow. I'm from the Defense Leadership. I'm curious about the computing power to pull this off. So, for example, I know up at the Allegheny Ballistic Lab in West Virginia, the Navy has a half Watson. Do you have the computing power and the storage to do the same thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So, we're using 16 Oracle Superclusters, and we're building out almost 2,000 operating environments. So as a point of reference, there's about 13,000 operating environments in all of DISA, we're going to have 2,000 of those. So now that's one of the things that keeps me up at night. So it's a good question. So it's another reason we're going to sort of scale up with the guard, 1 state, 2 state, 54 states, and then to the compos, is we can do the requisite performance tuning as we go through this. So I'd like to tell you on day one, performance is going to be just superb and perfect, but that'd be a slightly delusional thing for me to say. So absolutely, we have a core engine. It's an expensive engine, so I'm also looking at the opposite as how much is enough, right? So that we don't have to spend too much in, life cycle sustainment tail of this, because these big enterprise things, especially for an organization as long as the Army, they get to be pretty pricey, right? So we're looking to be efficient, but that's what we're using. I'm also working with our other teammates in the ERPs as we move to an enclave in DISA, so we can find efficiencies with respect to performance. But initially, we're going to be using 16 Oracle superclusters. Right.
Well,
it's pretty big. They've never done an implementation that big, so we're going to scale it up.
I think one other added point, and it's tied not directly to your question, but we're also going to have a COOP site, a full COOP site with the system. So as maintenance goes on, there's really no downtime operationally to the force. If you go and ask the guard, when does the evaluation system go down for maintenance, they generally say it's during guard weekend. So one big piece that we're attacking head on is that very fact. Hey, there's no operational downtime if you're sitting in CONUS. So a big upgrade from what we currently have today. Right. The question was about pushback. So we're on this worldwide tour right now of going to brief every tag in every state and territory, and we're about halfway done now. And I've been very, very, well, I would say we've been positively received at every single brief that we've gone to. It's pretty motivating when you walk in and tags throughout the country are saying, we want this now. I mean, it has been very, very good and positive feedback across the states. I will say, though, for the Army, right, this is a big change, right? So part of our road shows and our demos to show people that, hey, this is actually very, very positive. We're moving in the right direction. We're going to give much more capability. But like with any massive change, there are people that may be a little, concerned with where this is headed. So,
most of the tags that we've met with and their teams are pretty progressive, given the things they've done over the course of not just their military, but their civilian careers. So like one of the tags, she was an aviator, but also career United Airlines. Well, if you know anything about United Airlines, they've taken this journey through several airline mergers and different payroll systems and employees first, and they're completely mobile compared to the other airlines, 100% mobile, using PeopleSoft like we're going to use. And so pilots don't carry around big bags of maps and all the flight plans and all this other. They have iPads, right? Gate agents, ticket agents, flight attendants, they're all 100% mobile, right? So she got it, and she turned to her folks and said, hey, if you can't get on board with this, you probably ought to start looking for a job, right? And so another one was a cybersecurity guru, right? So Greg didn't even have to brief. I got grilled with technical questions for about an hour and a half. So pretty diverse. But another one was an Oracle implementer. So, she told us, stop giving me a sales pitch. I get it, right? So, but I will tell you, going to meet with every adjutant general on their team is critical because they work for the governor. They get their resources from Big Army. So it's very important to create a good teaming relationship, and it is an investment, a painful one, to hit all 54 states and territories. But when we go there and do it and we leave as a team, and that's critical.
Yeah, I think the big game changer, if there is someone with doubts, is you need to see a demo. You need to see a demo. And what we've noticed is anytime someone sees a demo, it's like, wow, that's where we're headed. Because if you've ever had to use 1983 technology, green screen, and having to memorize codes to do basic HR functions, or you have to fill out a 4187, a piece of paper, which has over 100 different formats, and you have to memorize those formats, and then you see what the system's going to do for you, we gain instant believers as soon as people see a demo. So again, we know this is a journey. We start with the Guard. In the 19, USAR and the active come on board. So massive change, and at that point you have all 1.1 million soldiers in the system doing HR, and then in 20 we add pay. So yeah, there is a lot of change coming, but we think it's pretty positive, and as you guys can tell, right, we're pretty excited about it. Say it again?
On healthcare?
Healthcare. That could be the next step, right? Absolutely.
So I've got the Army medical systems under me that are network related. So we're working with the OSD team, right? So the goal is to integrate better electronic health records and that initiative. So we are very much plugged in with the Surgeon General and their team, and my team will implement what the software that's developed by OSD. And the goal is to, now if you think about it, right, we have people that have to do miracles. So if you think about Landstuhl, right, where we take people out of theater when they're pretty badly wounded, right, and they come there and there's three groups of miracle workers that are boots on the ground, right, and this is true because there's a complete air gap between HR, pay, and medical records. So we have people that are unbelievable professionals, but they almost have to perform miracles to do their job. So if you hit a point on the ground and you had a fully integrated system, then you at probably one of the most difficult times of your life and your family's life, you wouldn't be worrying about pay and entitlements and benefits and all this other stuff. And quite frankly, that's the kind of thing that keeps Greg and I in the Army, to get there. It's too important. We really need to take better care of our soldiers and their families, and this thing's going to help do that. Anybody else?
Well, I'd urge you, then as we close, please come by on Wednesday to see that demo because it's very eye-opening. So if you understand our space today, I think you'll be very excited as you see where our space is going in the future. And then really talk to some of our fine folks that are working on the program. A lot of great NCOs, warrant officers, and junior officers that are both from the HR and the finance communities, and they're from all three components. Really a superstar team we've assembled to do this for the Army, and talk to those folks, and you'll get to understand a little more about what we're doing and where we're going. All right, with that, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.